Alright, welcome back folks to the latest installment of my WrestleRant Edition series here on YouTube, where I review every No Mercy pay-per-view as seen on the WWE Network. Today we're talking about No Mercy 2006. So kicking off the show, Matt Hardy versus Gregory Helms. Despite Gregory Helms being the Cruiserweight Champion at that time, the title was not on the line. They exchanged victories on SmackDown in the weeks leading up to this. Pretty standard match. The event emanated from North Carolina, and I mean, of course, Gregory Helms is also from North Carolina, but so it was a nice little hometown match and a good win for Matt Hardy. I don't want to say he fell far, but I feel like he should have been a bigger player on SmackDown than what he was at that time. I mean, this was a year removed from his iconic feud with Edge in 2005, but to have him open up the show in a throwaway match with Gregory Helms, which was good. They were building up Gregory Helms very well as a little mid-card heel, but I feel like they could have done more with him as opposed to limit him to just being the Cruiserweight Champion, just kind of relegating him to that division. And there's no really reason why they couldn't have put the belt on the line. I know Hardy put on some pounds over the years, but the guy's a former Cruiserweight Champion himself. Only 3 years before this was he Cruiserweight Champion. So I thought it was a little weird. The championship wasn't on the line, but they probably wanted to have Hardy win and not take the title off of Gregory Helms. So I guess it's one way of working your way out of it. But still, for what it was, good match to kick off the show. After that, for the WWE Tag Team titles, Paul London and Brian Kendrick successfully retaining the gold against Casey James and Idol Stevens, the later to be known as Damien Sandow. Michelle McCool was in their corner. A fun match. I mean, Casey James and Idol Stevens weren't around long enough to really cement themselves as true contenders to those titles. Paul London and Brian Kendrick, the longest reigning WWE Tag Team Champions in history. They were obviously wanted to keep the belts on them long term. Just fed them an easy challenge in James and Stevens at this period of time, so there was really no threat. They were really no threat to the tag team titles, but for what it was, I mean, they were a good tag team. I have no idea who Casey James even was, but Idol Stevens does not look remotely anything like Damien Sandow does now. But still, good match. Enjoyed it for what it was. Never really thought Casey James and Idol Stevens had any remote chance of winning this thing, but they were good wrestlers, and they put forth a good match with London and Kendrick at that time. So after that, we had MVP making his pay-per-view debut against Marty Garner. And Marty Garner, of course, is the same competitor that almost broke his neck in facing Triple H. I don't know how many years before it was. Maybe almost a decade, I want to say, in like 96 or 90, maybe even 95. But it was well over, close to a decade, if not over a decade before this. Marty Garner had taken, for those unaware of what it was, you can see it on YouTube, it's brutal. But when Triple H was going for the pedigree, he thought he was going for a power bomb, or he was going to lift him up or whatever, so he jumped super high and he spiked himself. I think he got hurt, not seriously injured or as injured as he possibly could have been, but it was a very scary spot. But he returned on this show, job to MVP, quick squash. MVP won with the Playmaker, impressive pay-per-view debut for one MVP. And he would go on to later move into his first real program in the SmackDown brand with Kane shortly thereafterwards. So after that, we had Mr. Kennedy taking on The Undertaker. Good match. Kennedy was still fresh on the scene at this period of time. Of course, he was on the No Mercy pay-per-view 1 year prior, and in the year since then, he had beaten Batista by countout. He had beaten Booker T and Rey Mysterio. His whole shtick at that time was that he was beating former world champions, including The Undertaker on this show. Granted, it was not via pinfall or submission; it was via disqualification, which was kind of dumb. Taker got himself intentionally disqualified, but I guess he was more concerned with beating Kennedy's ass and beating and respect into him than he was getting the win. And he would be the last man standing. I mean, I know you can argue that, Kennedy was made to look weak, but at the end of the day, Kennedy was a heel, and he was all about winning, so on the subsequent SmackDown, he would brag about beating The Undertaker, and it would continue the feud. It would not beat Kennedy. Taker wasn't beaten. I mean, Taker wouldn't be beaten clean by Kennedy anyway. But they would continue the feud, go on to face off until Survivor Series, and I believe have a last ride match there too. But, good stuff. Not a match that blew me away. It was the longest match in the entire show, kind of unnecessarily long, but good for what it was. And, I mean, Kennedy could have beaten him clean, could have cheated the win, but kind of a scapegoat win, but he won nevertheless, so I can't complain. After that, we had Rey Mysterio taking on Chavo in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I forgot this match even happened. I thought they had their match at SummerSlam, and then Rey Mysterio got hurt right afterwards, so he must have gotten hurt right after this pay-per-view. So I completely forgot this match even happened. Of course, that said, this is my first time watching it. A fun little match. Could have used more time than it did. Chavo was never really a true threat to Rey Mysterio. I've never really been a Chavo fan, but the guy was always and still is a good worker. I've just never really gotten behind him as the babyface or even as the heel. But this was around the time that Vicky Guerrero had turned heel and had sided with Chavo after thinking that Rey Mysterio was kind of feeding off of Eddie's legacy and whatever, just kind of buying into Chavo's bullshit. But Rey Mysterio won, nevertheless, avenging his loss from SummerSlam. So a fun little match. It was cool to see it spotlighted at the top of the card, but it could have used more time than what it got. After that, we had the return of Chris Benoit taking on one William Regal, who was all over this show. You saw him in various backstage segments, which were hilarious, by the way, with Vito a couple times and with the SmackDown GM Teddy Long. It's pretty funny stuff. I'm a huge Regal fan, but even his, I became a Regal fan right after this in 2008. But even his comedy work was absolute gold. But Benoit, after taking many months off, back in May, returned on this show. I don't know if it was obvious or not, or if they advertised and the crowd didn't pop huge, but they were very happy to see Benoit, and the match was great. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was not a quick squash with Benoit just forcing Regal to tap out within seconds. They had a solid, very solid 10-minute match, and with both guys being just amazing, both of them being amazing in-ring wrestling technicians, submission specialists, they had a great, rough and tough, brawling-like match that I really, really enjoyed. Just being a fan of that kind of wrestling, I thought it was a very enjoyable match and something, kind of a nice little change of pace that you don't ordinarily see in WWE, even then or today or whatever. So, great change of pace, an awesome return for Chris Benoit, who would go on to win back the United States Championship not too long after this, maybe even on the SmackDown after this show. I don't remember exactly. But still, a very good match and a great return for Chris Benoit. In a segment I forgot to mention before, The Miz had his birthday party, and they had Layla come out in lingerie and dance in his lap, which was kind of funny, only for the gift to be revealed as Big Dick Johnson or Chris Joseph, a part of the creative team, who I reviewed on WrestleRant Radio. Cheap plug, check that out from February on the website. But nevertheless, that was a fun segment. Stupid for what it was that I would mention. I thought it was funny though. And then we get to the main event, the Fatal 4-Way match for the World Heavyweight Championship. And like I always say, the 4-way stipulations are always hit or miss, but this one involved the then World Champion King Booker, Bobby Lashley, Batista, and Finlay. So yeah, multi-man matches, in my opinion, are always very hit or miss. They can be a massive clusterfuck or just absolutely brilliant. Yet somehow I feel like this match kind of fell somewhere in between. It was a good match, not bad at all by any means. I don't feel like it was predictable that Booker was going to win. They always put the heel in like these against all odds stipulations and they win anyway. So, maybe it was predictable from that standpoint, but Bobby Lashley was a real threat to that title. Finlay had turned his back on King Booker. They built that tension throughout this show. Batista was red hot on Booker T's tail, trying to win back that championship that he never technically lost. So, there were some rightful contenders to that title. I never thought for a second Finlay was going to win. Maybe not even Bobby Lashley, but there was some chance that Batista was going to win the belt. But in the end, it was Booker T capitalizing off of Batista after Batista had laid out Finlay, I believe it was, and he capitalized, picked up the win, and retained the title. So a good 4-way, not great, not bad, but they all had good chemistry with one another. They built up the story very well. It wasn't like 4 guys randomly thrown into a 4-way, but it was enjoyable and a nice little way of capping off the show. So overall, I thought this was a good pay-per-view, not a great show, not many blow-away matches, but in a nutshell, the opener, fun for what it was, tag team title match, fun, albeit unspectacular, but fun. MVP making his pay-per-view debut, so notable for what that was. Kennedy and Taker, solid match. Mysterio and Chavo, good match. Benoit and Regal, very, very good match. I would say even underrated. And the main event was good too. So I would lean more towards giving the show a thumbs up than in the middle. I thought it was a good show. A lot better than No Mercy 07 will be. And I'll be reviewing that in my next WrestleRant video tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But, I would check out the show. Maybe not the entire show, but there are certain parts of it, especially Benoit's return against William Regal. The main event was good. Nothing else was really must-see, but I did think it made for an enjoyable 2.5 hours on the whole. So, as always, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Always appreciate it. Be sure to support me and the channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing this video. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Follow me on Facebook. Give the page an old thumbs up at facebook.com/scream.jason.matthews. And check out the website at nextairwrestling.net. All the links are right down below in the description box. So, of course, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch you right back here tomorrow for my review of No Mercy 2007.